Genesis 24 is where we finally meet Rebekah, who would be the wife of Isaac. Now, this is a long chapter, and so I'll let you read this for yourself, but let me just highlight some things for you to give you a little bit of context. It says, "Now Abraham was old, Sarah was gone by now, well advanced in years, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he had, 'Put your hand under my thigh,'" which was one of the ways that they made promises and covenants, "that I may make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites," right, the people in the land where they were living right now, "among whom I dwell, but will go back to my country and to my kindred and take a wife for my son Isaac." Now, as you read this, and again, it's a long chapter, as you read this, you'll see the interaction with the servant, what the servant says. He makes a promise. He ends up going back to where Abraham had come from in the first place. He ends up interacting with a young woman at the well, Rebekah. And this is interesting as you read this. Like I said, it's a long chapter, but you'll see how they interact. And he ends up going back with her. He meets Laban, her brother, and they end up having this conversation. And here's what he says: "I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become great, and he has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male servants and female servants, camels and donkeys. And he sent me here to find a wife, and that's why I'm here. And I think Rebekah's the one," basically. I'll let you read this for yourself. He recaps the story from earlier in the chapter, and here's how Laban responds. Laban said, "Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken." And so he basically says, yes, you can go. Rebekah can go. So they sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men, and off they went with a blessing from Laban. Now, as you continue to read this, we get back to Isaac. Isaac sees her. They end up connecting, and it says in verse 67, at the end of this long chapter, "Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. And so Isaac was comforted after his mother's death." And so there's the story, kind of a long story, but there's a story of how Isaac gets a wife, Rebekah. And remember, in the context of the bigger picture, if Isaac didn't have a wife, then he wouldn't be able to have children, which was a major part of the promise that God had made to Abraham. So that's why these stories are in here as we begin to track the promise that God made to Abraham in Genesis 12, all the way through Isaac, and we'll see where it continues to go until finally Jesus comes to the world and Jesus dies on the cross and brings all these blessings that God promises to all nations. So Genesis 24, it's a long one. You're ready to read it. We'll see you tomorrow for chapter 25.